Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for another installment of I Got It Wrong, the series where I admit fault or bias or something that led me to missing the point in an older review. Today I'm going to be re-examining the fourth studio album, 1,000 Suns by Linkin Park, and initially, my reaction, my reception, and that of the fans and even some of the critics was harsh, to put it lightly. I've come full circle on this release. It took some time. My initial thoughts were never actually put out into the world in full form, and I'm glad that that video never saw the light of day. I mentioned it briefly in one of my other reviews, and we'll talk about that more as we get into this. And also, I did another Redemption review in 2014, but even still at that point, my heart wasn't fully coming around to the sound of 1,000 Suns. But now, a decade later, how are my thoughts lining up? Well, we're going to dive right into that, and very quickly, I just wanted to say that this video is dedicated in the memory of Chester Bennington. Today, March 20th, 2020, would have been Chester's 44th birthday, so let's go out and make Chester proud. In a way, Minutes to Midnight, that released in 2007, was the band's biggest commercial success, at least in terms of first week numbers. They had become a household name, people knew What I've Done and even Shadow of the Day because they were everywhere, but they were also starting to show more and more signs of, yes, maturity, but also wanting something more. And yearning for a new sound translated eventually into this nosedive into oblivion, into new sounds, new territories on 1,000 Suns. And I think that's what made the reception so head-spinning, polarizing. I think they wanted that and they meant for it to confuse you, but also challenge you. And I didn't get the challenge note. I was just like, oh, this is different. Let me put this away.
I know I said I was going to review the new Linkin Park album, 1,000 Suns, but it sucked, so I'm not going to review it. I'm sorry. If you want to know, I would give it like a 10% out of 100. Just don't waste your money on it, even though it's been on the top of the iTunes charts and I don't understand why, because it's just complete crap compared to Meteora and Hybrid Theory and even Minutes to Midnight.
Oh my god, older John from ARTV, what were you thinking? Number one. Number two, we're about to have words over this outside. Where was your understanding and appreciation of the electronic implementation, the more aggressive styles that were worked in? They don't always have to be chug 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 on the guitar to be aggressive. Where was your appreciation for the political speeches, the sampling, and also the turntables and everything else on this record? It went zip, 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 whoosh right over my head. And now looking back, it makes me cringe because I was so not open-minded. I was the opposite of that. A decade later, I'm realizing that I should have championed this record because it's easily one of their most ambitious. It's politically charged, angry, but aggressive in very different ways. It was just so wildly unexpected that I think that's what made people maybe say, oh, I don't really fully understand it, I'll come back to it later, and then a lot of people forgot about it.
It's just a complete disgrace to the band. I'm sorry for those of you that may offend.
1,000 Suns is not a guitar-driven record. It's driven by its ideas, by its ambitions, by its electronic soundscapes, synthesizers, sampling, turntables. Guitars are definitely still there. To be clear, this is not a guitarless album, and I think a lot of people had that preconceived notion about it without even fully hearing it for themselves, or else you heard it 8 or 10 years ago and you never looked back or thought about it twice. This is something that requires some time because it's a full album experience. It was lined up to be that way. There's a lot of transitory tracks, a lot of segueing, a lot of interludes that are very ambient, but I love the way they push the envelope. There are unbelievable amounts of passion bleeding through the cracks of this album. And I say cracks not as a bad thing, as in there's cracks in their armor. I see the cracks as the wounded world, and they're out here kind of pushing these political pioneers, the messages that they had, including them in their songs in interludes to help drive home the point. Even some of the full-length tracks like Wretches and Kings, once again, There are samples contained right in there, and it talks about pushing back against the machine. When things have become so bad, we have no choice other than to fight back and push our own agenda to match your hatred. One thing that really bothers me about people's perception of the record is that it's boring, or that it's stale, or that it doesn't move the needle forward at all. It just kind of sits around twiddling its thumbs, not doing much of anything. The instrumentals on this record are landmines when they truly go off. I think they're compelling as fuck. They're so engaging, and yes, there's ambience, but I compare it to other bands like Underoath that have kind of moved in that direction at certain points in their career to find the great line. That is not a boring record because it has ambience. It's engaging because it has the ambience along with the aggression and the heaviness. We're going to move swiftly through the track list here, but I do want to talk about nearly every single song. We open up this record with a bit of a slow burn. It's like going around the room, turning on all the light switches as the machine slowly starts to operate, and we get the Requiem, the Radiance, two tracks that I've come to appreciate for what they are, how they guide us into this record, and eventually to the third track, Burning in the Skies. This is the first full, complete song. And it's definitely something that's fighting for other people. The blood of innocence burning in the skies. There's such a light guitar here. I love Mike and Chester on this track. The way that they engage as vocalists, it's incredible. Especially the hook. The solo here, phenomenal. We then move to the transitory track Empty Spaces before going into When They Come For Me. And Mike Shinoda is like lightning striking down on this track. I love his rapping on this. I think that he's extremely skilled as an MC, but again, he elevated his game. His rhymes are stronger. I think that overall, he was more convincing because it's something that he genuinely feels either angry or else moved by. Robot Boy is next, and my god, I did a 180 on this track. It brings me to tears at this point on certain listens because Chester is not only so good, but the words being sung, it's almost a comfort. You say that you're not going to fight because no one will fight for you, but the strength of the world is going to give you the power to move on, to go. It's a push, and the subtle drops on this track, the synthesizers, everything feels like madness, the haunting choral-styled vocals. It's amazing, and this track leaves such an indent on your own life, yes, but also it kind of makes you worried for others in a good way, like check in on your friends. Waiting for the End pops up next in the track list, and this is truly one of the best singles that Linkin Park ever released. I think the music video is incredible. It helps sell the point of the song, but the music itself, man, come on. Those looping guitars, the way that they drive home this electronic energy, the synths serve as these chords that kind of tie everything together. But Mike and Chester are almost haunting on this track. It feels like you're being torn apart and being put back together in the same sentence. And it feels weird, but it feels good. It feels like you're flying almost. And this track does have this racing sensation as it progresses. As things get more intense, it only gets that much better. Two impeccable moments come right after Waiting for the End, and they're every bit as good as that track. I think this is the strongest back-to-back-to-back section on the entire LP. And in this moment, we get Blackout and then Wretches and Kings. Blackout, oh my god, the drum energy that opens up this track, it almost feels like a marching band in an apocalypse somewhere. And then the vocals come through, they start to get a little bit more pushy, it never hesitates, but finally it gets so aggressive, and then all of the glitching on this track, it just feels like you're being pitted against a bunch of demons, you're trapped somewhere in hell, and you just got here and you're like, what am I being greeted by? But I kind of like it. After this, we then navigate to Wisdom, Justice, and Love, which is my favorite interlude on the entire album. I love the fact that it feels more robotic as it goes on, and then we give way to Iridescent, one of the best songs on the LP. This is so fascinating to me because, again, it takes a little bit to take off, but it's like a plane. You don't just get all the way up in the sky in 2 seconds. You have to kind of hang in there, and then all of a sudden, you're flying high above the sky. This track uses great guitars. I love the fact that it does get heavier and more ambitious as it goes on. I think a lot of fans might appreciate this that might not even get into the entire record. I'm not trying to say that this will always be for everyone, but Iridescent is something that transcends because its message is universal, it's very relatable, it's impactful, but it's also extremely optimistic, and I love the fact that they go out on such a big bang. We drop off one more time for the interlude Fallout, which gives us a haze, a view of this world where it feels like maybe radiation is dropping down, flakes of something that's very clearly not good for anyone, and then we move to the catalyst. And the catalyst, of course, would be like the starter, the momentum, what actually caused this. And it's funny that the catalyst comes near the end of the record because it kind of reveals some of the motivations of what they've been singing and pushing across the entire LP. And then we move to this track that feels like a breakthrough. The catalyst is still a breath of fresh air. I think this is a fascinating moment for me because it did mark such a stark change of pace for Linkin Park, but it's also extremely well done. I love the swirling turntables that are sampled throughout. Also those guitars, the ambience of the synthesizers. Chester and Mike also just get so aggressive. You can tell that it's not always in the vocals, it's in their tone. You might think that that would be where we shut the door. That's the final track on the album, but instead, we get The Messenger, a song that is extremely hard for me to listen to. I listened to it today, the day I'm recording this video, and before the vocals even came in, I started tearing up because Chester Bennington's voice on this is unreal. It feels like he transcended life on this and is just reaching out to every soul that might possibly be listening. It's something that talks about love, how everything keeps us grounded, and how we have to keep pushing forward despite the odds possibly being against us. It's something that will definitely stab you in the gut, especially if you haven't heard it in a long time. Listener, beware. This is a moment that's so worth it for me, and it hits that much harder now that Chester has sadly passed away. My initial views on 1,000 Suns have come so far, from a 10% to now a 4.5 out of 5. This is a record that I have talked about several times throughout the years, and like I said, I even did a review in 2014, but this still was not good enough for me. I fully realized what this record is, how much it means to me, and what it stands for, and I hope that you guys will maybe give it another play too. There is a link in the description to stream it. Like this video if you enjoyed this episode of I Got It Wrong. I would love to know your thoughts on 1,000 Suns in the comments section down below, and please keep an open mind to this one, especially if it's been a while since you gave it a listen. Other than that, if you want to see more Linkin Park themed videos, tap here for another recent video. I've got more coming very soon, all things music, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, and I will see you soon for more on ARTV.